We know technology can be intimidating. There's always some new gadget or app. Even if you have your trusted set of tools, it feels like software gets updated every time you blink. And everything is a series of acronyms. That's why we're here, to offer solutions to the technology questions you've been too scared to ask, which brings us to this podcast, Ask OIT. Software, hardware, wearables, robots. Each month we'll answer any question you've got about tech. You can send us your anonymous questions, and OIT's Yasmin Yahya, that's me.
And Jesse Plaza, hi.
We'll hound our in-house experts to get the details. Then we'll share our expertise with you on the first Monday of each month. Jesse, do you want to get started?
Sure, let's do this. What have we got first up?
Our first question is, our department has files in both Box and Google Drive, and looking for a file in both places can be very time-consuming. Also, both are cloud services, but there doesn't seem to be any way to transfer files from one to the other. How can I easily view files across multiple services?
Oh, the good old, I like to call it the digital landfill. When you've got unlimited storage, it really can be unlimited, which means you've got years and years and years of files in this one big vault. Add another one to the mix, and it can sometimes be hard to find stuff if you don't have a good way of keeping yourself organized, or if you're working with multiple people, that just might be impossible in the first place. So, as you know, we use both Google Drive and Box here at St. Edward's, and all of our faculty, staff, and students have unlimited storage in both. So, what do you do when you have unlimited files in multiple locations and you're never able to find anything? Well, this is something that really is up to how you stay organized, both as a person or as a department. Here in OIT, I know, Yasmin, you can definitely speak to the fact that we've been trying to keep all of our stuff organized. I think trying to find the questions for this little Ask OIT episode, I looked in 5 different places before I remembered, oh, wait, we consolidated that folder on top of the other one. So it's true that there's a lot of stuff in Google and there's a lot of stuff in Box. And for various reasons, it may not be so simple as to just take everything from one and put it into the other. That's my recommendation. But probably the easiest thing to do would be to use the sync apps on your computer. Box Drive and Google Drive file stream are both available from Box and Google, and they mount your Box and your Google folder as kind of a virtual hard drive so that you can search for files through your native file Explorer or Finder if you're on a Mac or a PC. So then you don't have to go digging through click after click after click on the web just to try to find stuff. That's what I do, just because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to go to the web, go through my Hilltop, go through all this other stuff to find things. But yeah, try out those sync apps, Box Drive and Google Drive file stream.
Very cool. I'm glad someone submitted this question because I was thinking the exact same thing. So good job, submitter.
Eventually, I'll finally wear y'all down enough to let me just dump everything we have in our Box into Google Drive and be done with it. But, you know, things for the future.
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Second question. I am graduating soon. When will I lose access to my account and stuff like my email and Google Drive?
Ooh, 2-part answer. First, congratulations. The world is wild and you're certainly graduating into interesting times, but I hope your time here at St. Edward's has been useful. So to answer your actual question, alumni retain access to their accounts for a certain amount of time. You'll have your sign into My Hilltop forever, or, you know, forever until we replace it with something else in the far-flung future when none of us will be around for it. But there are some things that you're always going to need access to, like tax forms, transcript requests, so you'll still always be able to sign in. You may need to reset your password if you forget it years down the line, but that'll still be available to you. Certain things within that account, however, aren't. In particular, your mail, calendar, Google Drive, Box, all that other stuff, that's going to expire a little bit after a year following your last class. So all former students get a year of what we call a grace period, and shortly after that access expires. So our help desk students will hear it all the time where someone graduated back in 2012 and they remembered that they had a service attached to their St. Edward's account and they want to go get it back. Well, after that time, there's just not any email for us to grant access to again, even temporarily. So what we definitely advise is for that year after graduation, when you've still got access, transfer out anything you need. Move over accounts, definitely move anything that's charging you monthly, and just transfer out anything that you want to keep after that year period. The same goes for your Google Drive and your Box content. And for the Google stuff in particular, there's something I can definitely recommend. It's called Google Takeout. You just go to takeout.google.com and sign in with your St. Ed's account. And as long as you still have access to it, you'll be able to migrate it to another Google account. This is something that our graduating students do a lot. They'll take their St. Ed's Gmail account and transfer all the content out to their personal one. So then all they have to do is make sure that they don't have any accounts tied to it, because after it closes, it's gone for good.
Great tips, Jesse, as always. Thank you. We have one more question. I use a Mac and I keep hearing about Apple Silicon. What does it mean that Apple is making its own processors? Didn't they already do that?
Oh boy, Yasmin, I apologize. This is going to turn into a rant. So here on the Hilltop, I am our system and communication engineer. In addition to recording cool podcasts with our awesome staff, I also manage a number of technical services, including all of our Apple products. I also use a Mac. I'd say about 40% of the campus does. So, it's important to stay on top of this. Basically, Apple is turning your Mac into a giant iPad. That's super, super reductive. So let me kind of clarify here. In most computers, there's your CPU, the processor, the brains that runs all the other stuff. And it runs in a certain architecture. And that basically means it talks in a specific way. So you have to write apps that talk in the way that it talks. You can make some changes if it's a Mac or a PC, because Windows and Mac OS read those words differently. But ultimately, the chip in your 10-year-old MacBook is the same as the one in your 10-year-old Windows laptop, more or less. There's two big manufacturers of this architecture, which is called x86. All you need to know about that is it's from an Intel chip back in the 80s, blah, 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 math. Intel and AMD are two companies you may have heard of that make these x86 processors. And so it can only read that x86 architecture. Well, Apple, for about, I think, 10 years now, has been making their own chips. They call it their Apple A series. And those don't use x86. They use a different architecture called ARM. If you're a longtime Austinite, you may know that ARM and a lot of its development happens here in town, or at least it used to. I'm getting forgetful, but all you really need to know about ARM is that it's a different instruction set that is used on pretty much every single mobile chip. So your smartphones, your Samsung Galaxies, your iPhones, they all use various flavors of the ARM instruction set. It's meant to do more with more cores, which are the little thinking parts of a CPU, while your desktop computer may have 4 or 6 big, powerful cores. A smaller phone may have 8 smaller cores. It's all about how those instructions from your application can be broken up so that your computer can multitask and do it all at the same time. Well, the ARM architecture does that really, really well. So you want to put a lot of cores in there, but make them small. So your phone can multitask on a bunch of things like running Instagram, Facebook, Pokemon Go, all at once while taking the phone call or sending a message. It's a little bit different on the PC side, but basically, Apple has decided to ramp up these chips for desktops. They're now making what's called the Apple M1 chip, which is a big fat ARM processor scaled up to use power and complexity typical of a real desktop computer. Instead of just being a phone that has a battery and runs off a tiny charger, this would be, something with a battery that's the size of a phone itself. So what does any of that have anything to do with your apps and how you use your computer? Doesn't everything just still work? Well, actually it doesn't. You see, this architecture means that apps written for the x86 that's on older computers won't run on that computer, at least not natively. It'd be like trying to tell a guy who only speaks English your favorite quesadilla order, but you only speak Spanish. You're not going to get many places unless you start, waving hand signs around. So this means that all of these apps that you use are going to have to be rewritten. They're going to have to be reprogrammed to talk in that ARM architecture. Apple's been talking in a bunch of their ads, and you may have seen it, that it's super fast and super efficient. And in a lot of cases, it is. I'm seeing folks with the new Apple M1 MacBook Pro get 20 hours of battery life, which I could never pull out of this Mac that we're recording on right here, even on a good day. But the main thing is all those apps having to be rewritten means if they don't get rewritten, they're going to be operating in something called emulation. So if you're a fan of classic video games, you may have used an emulator before, which takes that classic video game and translates it to work on your computer, your smartphone, or wherever you're running it. It's basically it's a translator telling that guy what kind of quesadilla you want, even though he's a nerd who only speaks English. The same thing is available on the new Macs. It's called Rosetta, like the Rosetta Stone. It's going to translate those x86 apps into ARM so that they can work on your computer. But just as you have to basically repeat everything, wait for someone to translate, and then deal with that like awkward pause in the middle when you're trying to talk through a translator, so too is there kind of a pause and a waiting period with this Rosetta 2 thing. So as an example, Adobe Photoshop. I love it. It runs super well. If I want it to work on a new Mac that doesn't support it natively, it's going to have to work every single brush stroke, every single effect, every single layer through that emulation layer. And that's going to slow things down a little. So long story short, Apple is basically rewriting a completely new series of apps. Everything is going to have to be reprogrammed for this new kind of processor, which they've switched to because they think that they can get more power, performance, and battery life out of the same amount of energy. So this is all so that your computer uses less battery power and uses electricity. Uses less electricity. I think they're still going to use electricity. The desire for thinner, faster computers is only going to continue. And so these older x86 processors can only go so far. Compared to ARM, they're not nearly as power efficient. So Apple is really doing this much in the same way that the first couple of smartphones used ARM in the first place. It was more power efficient and faster for what they needed to do with it. So you can expect to see more Apple Silicon, which is really just a marketing term, computers to come out over the next 2 years or so as apps for the Mac are rewritten to use it. 5-second version, wait like a year if you want to buy a new Mac. Just don't do it yet. It's brand new. And while it works really well, there's still a lot of apps that don't support it. That was very long-winded and kind of ranty. Did any of that make sense?
It absolutely did. You were able to say that in a way that I could understand. So that is a great thing. So I commend you on that. And thank you for answering all these questions.
All right. I think that's it for all we've got this week, right?
Yep, that's it. So thank you for listening. We hope this was helpful to you. And if you think of a question that maybe doesn't really warrant a support ticket, but you're too embarrassed to ask anyone else, feel free to send it over if you have questions about all your tech needs. You can find our submission form on our blog and linked on our social media accounts, which you should follow, by the way, at
#SEOIT.
Very good. Thank you. On Twitter and Instagram. There you'll get the latest updates from OIT, which can be critical as our reliance on technology is greater than ever before, though you'll get fun stuff too, like information about events we're putting on and nice to know tech tips.
Yasmin, is this our last one of 2020?
I think so. I think that would make the most sense. And I guess we'll be back next year.
Happy holidays, everybody. Happy New Year. Happy end of 2020. I'm sure we're all waiting for that one, right?
Oh, yeah. It's crazy that it's gone by this fast.
Fast. Oh, okay, that's a thought. Anyway.
Well, thank you again, and we'll see you next year. Happy holidays.
Have a good one, y'all.